This is an opportunity to just sort of make sure that my children and my team members especially understand this is where we came from. And in the research project, I learned so much that I didn't know. Mm-hmm. And it just gives me way more of an appreciation for everything they had to go through.
Yeah.
Just to struggle and fight to get to the point where they bought a gas station. Right. And that's where that book ends. The book I'm working on now covers 1924 to 2024. But this particular book it gets us from like 1700s in Italy to 1924 in Concord, New Hampshire.
You're listening to Granite Goodness. We talk to problem solvers, innovators, and optimists across New Hampshire and New England. My name is Andy DeMeo. You can watch this episode on granitegoodness.com or listen on any podcast platform. Hope you enjoy it. Today, we have Amanda Grappone. We're here in Treeline Outfitters in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Amanda is a fourth-generation Grappone, and she helps to run Grappone Automotive, a business that started as a single gas station in 1924 in Concord. She lives in Sanborn with her awesome husband, who coaches sports at Winnisquam High School. She has 3 grown children, and you enjoy hosting exchange students. For fun, you raise chickens and turkeys and sheep, and your favorite place is somewhere in the woods on a trail that you've never seen before. And you say that New Hampshire is the perfect place for discovering these. Welcome to Granite Goodness, Amanda.
Thank you. I have long wanted to be here.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Why?
Because it's so good. I mean, it's right in the name. There's so much good going on.
So you mean Granite Goodness when you say that. You don't mean New Hampshire necessarily.
Oh, Granite Goodness specifically, yeah. I've been here 51 years, so minus a few here and there that I lived elsewhere. But
the lost years of the Grappone.
Yeah, exactly. The years that don't count.
So, like, I always love digging into that, and there's a million questions I want to ask you because you wrote a book, which is just an amazing accomplishment that I really want to read, and you were very generous to give me a copy. But tell me, why did you want to be? People like coming on the show, mm-hmm. But I guess when you heard about it and the idea came to you, why do you want to be on Granite Goodness?
Well, the easy answer is you saved me a lot of work because I wanted to do a podcast called What's New, Hampshire? Can you hear the comma and the question mark?
I can.
And you saved me all the time from having to do my own podcast. And I wanted to do exactly this. Just go out, find out what good things are people doing in the state because I tend not to consume news. I just find that it's a drag mentally on me.
Yes.
But if it's good news, bring it on. I want to read it. I want to see it. And because New Hampshire's so small and interconnected, it's so easy to go off on a tangent in a good way to say, I've met so-and-so yesterday, and oh, by the way, did you know that she's doing that or he's doing that? And then all of a sudden there's just this web of goodness happening. So more of this, please.
Oh my God. Well, I mean, you're speaking my language. We were just talking a minute ago, and I cut you off because I wanted this to be recorded. Maybe she can hear it. I met your sister, one of your sisters, Allison,
mm-hmm.
a time ago. I was, because the other day I was telling someone, I was like, I'm going to have a man. I referred to you as Allison Grappone, and then I was like, wait, that's not right. Something's
so
going
close,
on. Yes.
just a little off.
So close, And then I went and looked on LinkedIn, and I was like, oh my God, there's another one.
There are 2 of them.
Yeah, there's 2. No, there are 2 of them. And then I looked. So I apparently at some point, I think she invited me to a class that she was teaching or lecturing at UNH.
Mm-hmm, that makes sense.
Which was really kind of her. I remember that day specifically, and I had a great time. I don't know if everyone else did, but I had fun.
That matters not, Andy.
So I hope that, Allison, if you listen to this, that you had a positive experience meeting me. But this, if not, this is round 2 at entering the Grappone world.
Welcome to our world.
Yeah. Although apparently we might be third cousins or second.
We will figure this out. If you give me enough of your ancestors' names and rough times that you think they came over, I can look it up on Ancestry and just show you. Hopefully we can find the passengers list from the ships they came over on and things like that.
How
we
much
can start
time
to trace it back.
Do you have? We got, all right, Luigi DeMeo, 1911, married to Maria Teresa Abate, mm-hmm. also in 1911. They had 5 children, One of them was Angelo DeMeo, whose
Yep.
son was Paul Mario, who's my grandfather. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that's good though. Text me that. I can, yes, in my spare time, I'll just plug it into Ancestry. It's very easy to do, actually, once you're used to it.
Yeah. You know what is funny about that, though? So there was and it's an amazing website, and I'm not nearly as good at it as you or my wife, who's like the really good, ancestral researcher. So I did this myself, like, I don't know, 8 years ago, and I went and logged in and tried to connect myself to people. And I found a guy who, and he looks just like my dad. Mm-hmm. And so do like some of the other people he's related to. And I was like, oh, that's my great-great-grandfather Luigi. And then I just, for a year, and I found a picture of him.
Yeah.
I put him up. You can see where this is going. He was on my mantle. He's on my fireplace, right? And I was so proud to tell people the storied history of like Luigi DeMeo. He had 4 sons, and he probably fled Italy from the war and came to America. And like, that's my great-great-grandfather. And then we really did a deep dive last summer.
Yeah.
And my wife comes to me and she's like, I don't think you're related to that guy.
Yeah, sorry.
But I don't know. It raises this interesting question, right? Of like ancestry and lineage and influence in relationships. And I guess my biggest question for you is like, what did you like or enjoy most about digging into your family history, writing that book? Like, why'd you do it? What did you enjoy about it?
The easy answer is I did it because we turned 100 years old as a company last year, and I wanted to commemorate that with what I was calling for a while an enhanced pamphlet, because I was so afraid to call it a book, because I think a lot of people intend to write a book and then they never do, and then it hangs over them that I never have written that book I always said I was going to.
Yeah.
So eventually I did admit that it was a book, and not to spoil what's in the first chapter there, or even in the introduction maybe, but my great uncle James, who I knew as Uncle Jimmy when I was a little kid, my grandfather's brother, back in 1977, he and his sister sat down and just data dumped all their memories and wrote down like 38 pages of just handwritten memories of Grappone from the very beginning, from the 20s. And nobody knew that document existed. And it, excuse me, it just kind of surfaced in 2022. And my assistant, Beth, she found it in the back of one of her drawers in her office, which was weird because we had done a massive renovation of that building about, 8 years prior.
Yeah.
7 years prior. And she had all new furniture. And so like nobody knows where this thing came from.
Yeah.
And she knew that I was working on gathering family history. And she handed me this envelope. She's like, I don't really know what this is, but I know you're going to want to read it.
Yeah.
So I spent the time, it was fairly legible, but I spent the time transcribing it. And just, that's when it struck me, like if you don't write this down, it's going to be lost forever.
Yeah.
And furthermore, Uncle Jimmy just filled in a whole bunch of blanks that you never knew the answers to. So now you kind of have a responsibility to write it. So that's kind of what started it. And then also I'm the last Grappone family member there after 100 years.
Right.
So that was sort of another impetus to say, okay, well, it's not like my brother, because my brother passed away when he was 35. We were business partners.
Yeah.
So the plan was he and I, as the 4th generation, would do our thing, pass it along to the 5th, and, all goes well.
Yeah.
But obviously that didn't transpire with his death. So with him gone, I don't have any cousins or in-laws or anybody left.
Well,
and
hold on. I'm sorry. You might have that's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
You can pass Grappone Automotive on to me.
I don't have any known cousins in the business. Yeah. So I thought, that this is an opportunity to just sort of make sure that my children and my team members especially understand this is where we came from. And in the research project, I learned so much that I didn't know. Mm-hmm. And it just gives me way more of an appreciation for everything they had to go through just to struggle and fight to get to the point where they bought a gas station. Right. And that's where that book ends. The book I'm working on now covers 1924 to 2024. But this particular book it gets us from like 1700s in Italy to 1924 in Concord, New Hampshire.
Oh my gosh. Could you give an example, like, I don't know, when you say like the kind of stuff that they had to endure? Because this is a good, and I asked that because, again, there's a show about optimism. A lot of the time I like to talk about, man, what are some of the ways, like everyone's so over-indexed on everything going wrong, everything bad about the world. It can be easy to forget that, man, people really cared if you were Italian or Irish, or list any other, demographic quality that we would now think of as nondescript, right? So like, was there some of that? Did people hate them
Oh, a
'cause they
lot
were
of that.
Italian?
So they came, my great grandfathers came in 1891. They both came 3 months apart, which I didn't realize until I did the research. So this would be my great grandfather's dads. They each came with one son and made their way in New York and then eventually sent for the family. So that at that point, the Irish had already been here a couple generations and been through being at the pretty much the bottom rung of the ladder in terms of who doesn't want to deal with them and hire them and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So by the time the Italians arrived, the Irish were elevated above the Italians.
Yeah.
And basically Italians and black people were the absolute bottom of the social ladder.
Yeah.
So just looking at some of the stats about like the Public Works Department in New York City, what percentage of them were Italian? I don't want to misquote myself. It's either 70 or 80. It was a huge percentage. Digging the subway tunnels, doing all the work that nobody else wanted to do. One thing I found, this is a bit of shocking information. When Italians were killed in like mine disasters, for example, their lives were worth less than people of other ethnicities.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
In terms of like, insurance
So like
payouts and stuff?
Yep. Like, you lost your relative, here's $20. And if you were Irish, you got 40 or 50 or whatever it was.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So that things like that. And I guess I knew in me somewhere, I knew that it was tough.
Yeah.
But until I started to try to put myself in their shoes and understand what on earth must it have been like to go from, even though southern Italy was just racked with problems, natural disasters, disease, high taxation, terrible government, all of that stuff, racked with poverty. When they came here, they had, to some degree, they had that to deal with. Plus, they were no longer outside in nature, looking up at the sky, or working in the fields or in the groves or whatever they happen to do back home. So being now smashed into, in the case of my great grandmother's side of the family, into a tenement house in the north end of Boston, like how on earth mentally must that have been you have no running water and no toilet.
Yeah.
You're all kind of packed in there like sardines. And you can't really even see daylight.
Right.
So all that kind of stuff is feels like imprisonment to me.
Right.
Not that I've been imprisoned, but I just finished Nelson Mandela's book, The Long Walk to Freedom.
Sure.
So I have prison very much in my mind. And it feels like that must have been in some ways a mental prison sentence.
Right.
To be taken away out of your natural element. Plus my great grandmother never learned to speak English.
Wow.
So on my great-grandfather's side, they did, which allowed them a lot more, in my opinion, a lot more upward mobility because they were able to engage in English. They could read and write. She was illiterate. When they signed the mortgage for the gas station, her signature's an X. So she couldn't write her name.
Wow.
So, I mean, there are 8 million examples I could give you, but that's one that comes to mind. It's just that, not being able to be out in nature and enjoy. And that was in Boston. When they came to New Hampshire, they enjoyed Concord very much, I think.
Should I have not locked the door? I hope that didn't make you uncomfortable.
Can I please get out of here, Andy?
Yeah. I know it seems like a very welcoming place. It's not.
I know.
There's actually manacles around your feet now. We put them on very, very gently.
But I can still reach the beer taps. So.
That's right. Yeah. Manacles. I know. So you just put your mouth right in it. Well, that's what I do when no one else is around. Just goes, and I slide across the freezer. Anyway, wow, that's absolutely insane. And just so fascinating to learn all that stuff. And I mean, there's a million questions, but I would love to hear, two questions come to mind for me, right? Okay, so in this exercise of, biography, right? Or biographical, storytelling about your family, I wonder if it's made you reflect, right? About your own path through life, and all of that. And I would like to hear, your relationship with New Hampshire, and maybe if you can sprinkle in the path that your ancestors took to here, because that sounded pretty interesting as well.
Yeah, my path is pretty linear. I was born in Concord Hospital in 1973, grew up in Concord.
Begins in New Hampshire.
Yes. Went through all the Concord public schools, graduated from Concord High in 1981, left a year early, graduated early so I could go to Germany and be an exchange student over there.
Wow.
And then did my studies at UNH in between. I took a couple semesters off and I worked for Outward Bound, the outdoor education program. It's down in North Carolina. And then September 11th happened and I was like, kind of hate my job.
Yeah.
Not super. I was in the wrong marriage at
Right.
the time. And I realized like this is just not going the way I had hoped. And I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I
Yeah.
could literally be blown up. So
Right.
I think I'm going to get in my Volkswagen Eurovan, which was the weekender package, you
Yeah.
know, the flip top
Yeah,
that you
yeah,
can sleep
yeah.
in. And drove with my now ex-husband out to the West Coast and found work in California. I got divorced out there and then spent a couple years selling cars of all things because
Yeah.
I didn't want to be in the car industry. I'd been doing it for so long. I was just
Yeah.
like, I need a break.
Right.
But turns out when you're a no one in San Francisco, you kind of got to do what you know how to do.
Right.
So not that I knew how to sell cars, actually. I'd never actually been on the sales floor, but
Right.
I got a job at a Lexus store out there in Marin County, which is, if you're not familiar, probably think it's the second richest county.
I am not familiar with the Lexus dealership in Lynn County. No.
Well, no, Marin County. I didn't know.
Marin County.
Marin's kind of famous because it's so shishi. It's almost like I did this on purpose, like go to where the rich people are and sell a rich person car.
Yeah.
I am not that calculating.
Right.
I ended up where I was because one of my college roommates lived in Oakland over the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, this other place looks kind of nice over here. So I settled down there and got a job out of the newspaper.
Yeah.
Classifieds. That's how old this lady is.
Wow.
And then sold for a couple years and then ended up coming back when I turned 30. My dad called me. He's like, I'm 60 or 30. Like, any idea what you're going to do with your life? I'm like, well, I guess I could come home.
I'm selling cars, Pa.
Yeah, that's right. So it was great. It was a great education, honestly. I learned by doing. I learned best by doing. So I could sit in a room and be told this is how to negotiate. But like until you have to actually go face a human being and
Right.
negotiate and try to get more money out of them than they want to give you, that's not something I think you can really learn out of a book.
Was that a lesson then that you got from, just having to sell cars?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know, the value of relation. Like, what did you get from that?
What I got from it was that I didn't know I had a very deeply seated philosophy that there is such a thing as enough. Like people in car sales in particular, and this is right around like early 2000s, and we're in a hyper competitive, pure commission based environment
Yeah.
where like fear, I did a TED talk about this. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's like the fear of I'm not going to sell enough cars. We're not going to make enough gross. There's just
Yeah.
not enough for everyone. When you're motivated by fear,
Right.
I really feel like it constricts you in a way. Like you almost can't, you can't be open even if you wanted to be because you're
Right.
too busy protecting yourself from whatever you're afraid of.
Yeah.
So I guess that's where I started to understand I don't love commission-based sales. And it has its place. I'm not saying it's like evil and it shouldn't
Yeah.
exist. What I'm saying is that if you're trying to inspire people to be creative, terrifying them that they're not going to make enough unless they steal the deal from the next guy is probably not the way to do it.
Yeah.
So there's that. I learned that about myself. And then I guess I just learned that, like the difference between a publicly held company and a privately held one, because we've been private for our whole
Yeah.
history. And I worked for Sonic Automotive, which is traded on the New York Stock Exchange. Very different philosophy about like, this is the number and you don't hit it and you're out.
Right.
Because guess what? There's someone behind you who can come in and hit that number.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of appreciation for the fact that you do have to understand your numbers. You have to hit your numbers because if you don't, nobody has fun because you're out of business.
Yeah.
However, I also understand that you can inject some humanity into it
Right.
and not be a total loser
Yeah.
when it comes to playing the game. So
Yeah.
I learned a ton in that 2 years.
Now, when you came back and kind of got more involved in your family business, like were some of those principles, I don't know, like did that jive with how Grappone Automotive had been run, or was it like
half and half? I'd say.
Yeah.
Because we were traditional sales basically. We had so if you haven't bought a car recently, your memory probably goes something like this: you do some online research, you go in. If they don't have what you want, it's possible they try to convince you to get something that maybe they have and you didn't know you wanted,
Yeah.
which is perfectly fine. Because listen, I got a lot of inventory,
Right.
and if you didn't want white but silver's available for $500 less, like
Yeah.
please help me out. Like, take
Right.
the silver one. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
exactly.
But then you'd go from picking the car and working on what's my payment if you're a payment person to going to the finance department. And then going through the whole rigmarole of do you want all these different finance products and then what's your rate going to be with the bank and blah, blah, blah. So one of the things that I found most distasteful about car sales was the whole finance process. So when I came back, That was 2004. I started working in fixed ops, so the service and parts and collision center side of the house. So I had my experience for a couple years there, but then I moved over to sales. I did. I was a collision center manager for a few years.
People are going to fact check this.
That's fine. That's cool. Call me. So in 2000 and I want to say 10 maybe is when I became the director of sales for the whole company. And that's when I was really kind of pushing like, listen, we have a system in place that whether we like it or not, we're pitting long-term guests who trust us and say, hey, Amanda, it's Andy. Just give me the best price you can on a Camry. I don't feel like spending 5 hours at your dealership.
Right.
With somebody online who, let's just pick on Massachusetts because frankly,
That's what we do.
It's easy to do. I have so many friends from Mass.
Yeah.
I do. I love them.
No, me too.
However, if you are in Massachusetts and you shotgun a lead out to 15 dealerships and like whoever's the cheapest gets my business, that person would get a cheaper price than you who trusts me enough to say, just give me your best price.
Right.
I could not reconcile that. Like that doesn't make any mental sense to me.
Yeah.
It doesn't allow me to feel like I'm being transparent and honest. And yeah, we have to make money, but there's such a thing as good profit and bad profit in my world.
Right.
And to have to make what I would consider bad profit off of people who really trust me and are loyal to cover up for the good profit of just blowing out cars, like somebody help me understand how that's a good business model. I will never agree with that.
Yeah.
So that's when we made a huge switch back in 2012 to negotiation-free selling is what we called it. So the price is what the price is, and we didn't have finance managers anymore, which was a huge financial hit to the company. It was a massive risk, and most people still don't do it. You'll still run into finance managers a lot because they're very skilled. They have one job and one job only, which is to generate gross off the sale of products, and that's how they're paid.
Yeah.
So because we don't have that, we have the sales staff handles the transaction front to back.
Right.
We have someone come and help with paperwork, but they're representing all the products. They're helping you understand, like, based on your driving habits and who you are as a person, does it make sense for you to have gap insurance?
Yeah.
If the answer is no, we're going to tell you no. And if
Right.
the answer is yes, but you're not sure, like, well, make sure you're educated before you make the decision.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have gap insurance and you smash your car up and it's worth, you owe this much, but it's only worth this much, there's going to be a gap. You got to figure out, do you want to be covered by that or not? So, so it's our job to just be the professionals, to let people know that these are options and they're choices that you have to make, but we want you to make them intelligently.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've all heard the economic adage. Show me the incentives and I'll show you the outcome, right? And so much, you must know Jesse Lohr, right? The Green Wave for electric vehicles. You know, he reminds me of you and you remind me of him very much.
Is he stunningly attractive?
I mean, I can't even speak right now when I think of the memory every time I see him, because he's always, he's like a wordsmith. He's a rapper, so he's always.
Oh, he is?
Well, yeah, very poetic.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he has this kind of bardic quality.
And his name is actually Lohr?
I think.
How
Yeah,
perfect
you see what
is
I mean?
that?
Yeah, he literally.
Is this a pseudonym?
No, I swear to God. I mean, I talked to him. He literally is like a Dungeons and Dragons like bard come to life, but sells you cool electric cars. But he said the same thing. Like people, and I love everything you just said. Like, yeah, it might have been a short term hit, right? But I feel like trust is just this it's the ultimate currency, right?
It is.
And
It is.
it's both things. I feel like, and like really. Business people who lead with integrity, I have found that they all say similar things of like, no, really, you don't cut corners if you treat people with respect and integrity and dignity and, the trust, right? Only takes 1 second to break it. And so maybe, the mode of doing business, right? Like, yeah, you can get healthy profits in the short term, but like eventually word's going to get out that that lead system is messed up. And it's like, wait, hold on, I've known Amanda for 15 years and she said I'd get a good price. And that, like it catches up to you, particularly in, the modern world where there's like a lot more transparency and scrutiny on the way that like markets function and the way that advertising happens and, the way these transactions are facilitated. So I feel like you're literally like it's long-term versus short-term, right? It's like
very much so.
We'll take it.
I always look at myself. I'm on this continuum.
Yeah.
We're now 101 years into whatever this adventure is supposed to be. And my appreciation has only grown since doing all the research for the book and understanding 100 years worth of people,
right?
Thousands of people have put blood, sweat, and tears into Grappone to make it what it is.
Yeah.
So that we currently show up every day and have the privilege to carry it on to whatever the next generation looks like.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest lesson for me that I didn't expect to learn, it wasn't even a lesson. I knew it was more like an affirmation for me. After finishing the book and knowing that I had something to share with the world now, that I didn't have to like keep telling the same story. I could just hand somebody this and say, okay, this is actually what happened. It really occurred to me, like, I am owed nothing by this family business.
Right.
And I know that that's a really different way of looking at it than most business owners, because they're like, I'm owed everything because I'm taking all the risk.
Yeah.
True statement.
Right.
For me, in my heart, what I can tell you, everything I have, from professional development to my higher education to my kids being able to go to college, my salary, I owe everything I have to this company.
Yeah.
And when I think of it like that, I'm like, yeah, it's my family business, but like, I'm not an owner. I'm a steward. My job, it's like being a land steward.
Yeah.
Can you really own land?
Right.
Really? I mean, for reals. You didn't make it.
Yeah.
You can take care of it.
Right.
You can try to make sure it's taken care of for the next generation.
Yeah.
So the whole multi-generational thing really resonates with me. And when you talk about trust, you are correct that it can be lost. And one thing I found when we switched over to this different style of selling back in 2012, I got so many unexpected emails and phone calls and things, because that's when we started. That was concurrent with the branding and advertising that we started doing with me on the radio. So I've been on the radio probably close to 13 years now. So people are used to hearing my voice.
You seem like a real amateur to me.
I never
Is this your
would have
first
guessed.
time in front of a microphone?
So when people hear me, they're like, you sound like a real person. I'm like,
Right.
Turns out, because I actually am.
Yeah. Hi, I'm here. What's up?
But I got a lot of phone calls and emails saying, back in whatever year, so-and-so screwed me on this deal, and I promised I'd never come back to Grappone.
Yeah.
I was shocked by how many people. They were like, you sound like a nice person. I'm going to give you a shot.
Right.
And I am still, every day, I am grateful that we get to show up and try to earn people's trust.
Yeah.
It's there to lose if we do something stupid.
Right.
And, there's that human element. Of course, things are going to happen. Like, we have a stupid AI phone system because we have so many incoming phone calls.
Right.
It's going to drop people and piss them off. And that's the human side of, we make mistakes and unfortunately erode at the trust.
Yeah.
But like, knowingly, we don't upsell work in the shop that doesn't need to be done. We don't sell people things they don't need. We don't bury anything in the finance contracts. It's just all the crazy crap that probably still happens at a lot of places.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen. I can say that with 100% surety.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of that.
Yeah.
And that's something I want my kids, if they choose to come in the business, I want them to understand this is what Grappone stands for.
Right.
It has absolutely nothing to do with selling cars to people.
Yeah.
It's all about trust building, relationship building. Our whole mission statement is to build lifelong relationships.
Yeah.
And that's my job. If I can demonstrate that and my kids can do that just naturally without having to think about it, then I've done my job.
Yeah. Well, I love that. I mean, it's like, I feel like the people who I often admire the most, I mean, it's like, TED Talk, right? The great guy, Simon Sinek, right? Find your why, right? Yeah. I'm going to butcher it, but his whole thing is like, hey, when Apple was like the thing and, doing great and people looked at them as an innovative company, it's like, we don't make computers to sell money to change people's lives. Like, our goal is that, like, we want to like change people's lives with good quality stuff, we just happen to sell computers, right? It's like this inversion. Like, you bring the same attitude of like, hey, we want to build relationships. We want to remember that this is all a human-oriented enterprise. It has been since day one. It will continue to be. And if we forget that, we won't survive and we will lose the opportunity to serve people, And I just think, I mean, it's particularly topical, and I would want your opinions on this as well. Like, there is so much talk now, again, about like the technology, and my view, everyone has these anxieties, right? Whatever, I'm sure they did with the radio and the internet and the telephone, right? Textbooks even, teachers were very afraid that textbooks were going to replace them when they were first introduced in classrooms. Not to like wade into that whole debate about AI, but, people are often frightened for the future and the change that technology will bring. And so is that something that you think about, right? Because even the automotive industry, right? Like, it's changing all the time. It's one of the frontiers of innovation when you think of like how fast things are changing and, different countries innovating and, sectors growing and shrinking. Like, it's just a wild, crazy world. And my opinion, Amanda, and I want to hear yours, is that, whatever the future holds, you are not going to be ill-served by focusing on the things that you do, right? Like, hey, I don't know what is going to be happening in 10 years, whether the car is going to like make you a grilled cheese and serve it to you.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, maybe. I have no idea, right? Like I'm not a technologist in that way. But remembering that it's all there to serve you.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be useful for a human being, right? Like, do you think about that a lot? And with all the, all the innovation, all the technology and the way that it permeates your line of work, like you must have reflections on all this.
I do. I reflect a lot. So I would say the boiled down version of my answer is going to be.
You can give me the unboiled version.
Okay.
Give me the raw sap. We don't need the syrup.
I will say this. I would rather, speaking of sap, be tapping my trees and boiling down, which is this is the first year we've done it. So my apologies to the veterans who are like, please use the proper lingo. Sap from a tree, boiling down my sap into syrup.
Oh, I'm
right?
not going to know. Yeah.
So this weekend, that's what's on I'm so excited. 2 solid days. My husband and I are just going to be whatever
Just
people do.
watching
Watching
sap boil.
Yeah, exactly.
It takes a lot because I did it
30,
once.
Is it 30 gallons to one?
I think it's 31
40?
or 40 to 1,
Okay.
somewhere in there.
We've harvested so far about 40 gallons off of, it's a measly operation. It's a literal mom and pop, like jam the plug in the tree in the front yard and just hope for the best.
But how good is it going to taste?
It's going to be
You're going to be so
awesome.
proud. You're going to
So good.
You're going to have a little jar this big and you're going to
It's
show
like,
it
I made that.
to everyone in your life. You're going to put it
And it
around
costs
your neck.
$600.
Exactly right. You're going to be like, have it around, just go around to people like, I've got a little dropper. Do you want a little?
Oh, yeah.
I'll
You
give
wear
you a
a
little
vial
taste.
like Angelina Jolie wore her brother's blood.
Yes,
I will
exactly.
wear my
That's
my
perfect.
own syrup.
I think that would be a very attractive quote. Like if I met someone and they just had, a syrup thing.
Yeah.
I'm all in.
Nothing says New Hampshire really like that. I think you should start a new line of jewelry.
There is a pancake breakfast coming up that,
Yeah?
I told you the Sistina Bilbrew's crew, we're all going to like go invade this pancake breakfast.
Where is it?
I don't even know. It's some, Fiona Wilson, who's like a UNH.
yeah.
Yeah, she's a good friend. She posts about the stuff on LinkedIn, and
Okay.
then I just I
All
send
right.
out the call, and it's like, we're going. to
Okay,
this.
we'll go to Heritage Farm in Samberton.
Okay.
Because they boil their own. They're boiling right now. They just opened last weekend. They're open, I think it's only Fridays and Saturdays or something like that. But
Okay, so this is
Gotta
another, like we've already agreed that we're going to do another episode in the K-Truck.
yeah.
Now we're going to do what you see this is going.
Yeah.
Boiling sap.
Yeah.
We're going to have a sap boil.
And then we're going to go to Italy.
Yeah,
to
on
Campania.
a family history
yep.
trip.
Have your wife tell me, you can edit this right out. Have your wife tell me did she do the research on your family?
She did. She did all of it.
Just tell me what town you're from. I'd be curious to know.
I thought
Unless you
Campania
know.
was the town.
No, it's a region.
Okay.
Yeah. But whatever. Naples is in there.
Here's
Yeah.
what I will say, because I am obsessed with the gladiator Spartacus, which I know is a ridiculous thing. I know that the ancient Roman city of Capua was in this region.
Okay.
And Capua is where Spartacus, who was a Thracian.
Probably your cousin. If I had
Yeah,
to
exactly.
guess,
Well,
based just on the physique.
This is my theory. Thank you. This is my theory. So he was like a Northern Greek, right?
Yeah.
He was captured, there's a whole debate about what happened to him. And I know this is what people want to hear about Amanda Grappone and Grappone Automotive, the history of Spartacus, but you're going to appreciate it. He comes to Rome or to Capua, he's a slave, he's a gladiator. They force him to fight for entertainment. He escapes, right? And he becomes, he stands up to the Romans, this great freedom fighter for all human history. And what we know is that, we know he was in Capua. We know the name of the gladiator school he was at. And we know that when they first escaped, they hid in a traveling cart of weapons, and then they had the weapons. And so I don't think I'm related to Spartacus, but what I'm convinced of is that at some point someone would have sold hot dogs or something at the gladiatorial games that he would have done, and that's who I'm related to, the hot dog guy.
Yeah.
At
Who fed him his last sausage? Before
exactly.
he
Yeah.
Fought a
In
lion
the
or whatever?
Coliseum, that's my great.
You should probably get the DNA done just to make sure.
When
it's a believable story.
When
but
we're in Campania, we're going to take many sample. Anytime I see dark colored sand, I'm going to say that's ancient blood,
Yeah.
and that's my DNA right there. And then we're going to put it in a vial around my neck. mix it with the syrup, and
Yeah.
this is getting gross. What are your thoughts on technology, Amanda?
So my thoughts on technology are that I don't talk about it as much as I talk about other natural things based on the conversation we just had. I'd rather be tapping my maple trees than looking at the latest videos on what, the Chinese manufacturers are putting out for cars that are so much less expensive and so much superior in quality to what we're doing in the United States. I mean, I could have that conversation. If you gave me the choice, I'd rather talk about my maple tree. Also, to the point where there's so many things I absolutely have zero control over.
Right.
So I'm trying to figure out what can I exercise some control over.
Yeah.
And we are sort of at that intersection between we don't make the product we sell.
Yeah.
We represent it. And we make sure that the general public has questions answered about it and has a good experience with it. So even though we didn't make it, even though if it might have a recall or a defect or something like that, we need to stand behind it and we need to represent it. So in the way that we have manufacturing partners, yes, I'm definitely there by their side, and I fly their flags because I have the privilege of being able to sell their product.
Right.
But at the same time, am I gonna spend my summer doing R&D on AI and automobiles? I am not.
You got to boil sap.
Well, not this summer, honey.
Well, I mean, not to say I would not be surprised. Again, I am sure that there are many people who, again, tech is great, right? But I think that it's easy to over-orient towards it, right?
Yes,
and I have
not being able to find my way here, and I'm a New Hampshire native. Let's just tell everyone about that.
Yeah, tell me.
Because
about
I ended up in Exeter,
Yeah.
which is a lovely little town.
Right.
Because I was coming on the back roads from UNH.
Yeah.
And I blindly followed my nav to what was the correct restaurant name,
Yes.
just in the wrong city.
Did you go by the Word Barn through Newfields and Newmarket?
It
would have been on.
Yeah,
your right,
I would. I definitely went
a
through
little on the
Newmarket.
corner. Okay.
And probably Newfields, but
Yeah.
there's not a lot of markers in Newfields to know you're there.
There's
are there?
not. No.
Yeah, that's the way I came.
Okay.
Lovely drive.
Yeah, I love that. I used to take that drive when I was working in Boston. I'd drive to Exeter, get on the train, so I know that drive very, very well.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful drive.
Yeah. So the point being, I blindly followed my nav when I probably should have just opened my eyes and been like, I knew something was fishy when I was leaving UNH and it was sending me to Newmarket and not Portsmouth. I'm like, but this dude's in Portsmouth. What? But my nav must know. So yeah, that's ridiculous. And I'm a foolish woman. I should have known better.
Well, I don't know. It's part the happy accidents, right? If you only ever go and go to where you expect to go, what is the point of that?
Yeah, that's not as fun as it could be. You're right.
Well, no, I mean,
I was late, so there's that.
I mean, we're here and we're talking, and now you have a fun little. Now we've shared that drive. I've driven that drive a million times.
Yeah.
The train goes by, and you can race the train at night or early in the there's many reasons to love that drive. At somewhere in Newfields, I don't know where it is, and I don't really want to know. Apparently, Chris Sununu lives there. I've always been wondering, one of these houses.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna wave, and maybe he'll see me, and
he'll wave back.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's what they do.
That's the New Hampshire way.
But no, I mean, seriously, I have a lot of respect for whatever people think about technology in the future and AI and whatever, and I don't have a particular interest in talking those things for the sake of them, but I am very interested in hey, whatever that is, maintaining your focus on this is all. It's never not going to be about human beings.
Yes,
right?
Correct.
And that is a strength that you have and that you do really, really well. And you're look, I can't, I'm not a technologist, but what I can do is I know that people need to buy cars and the cars need parts, and, we operate with integrity. That is a winning formula, and it's hard to see that not working.
And not for nothing, that's enough to do. It's a lot to run a retail automotive shop. It really is. I mean, there's so many things to consider on a daily basis, from the phone system to the computer system to people calling out sick, or a global pandemic hits, and then what do you do? We have plenty to do. We don't need to lose our focus and to be shiny object all over the place.
No, 100%. Cars are everywhere. America may be the most car-centric nation ever, right? And I feel like we have a very personal relationship with our cars. And this, I think, is a good, dovetail to some of your ideology around how to do business, right? A lot of the time, people, they're just looking for something functional, right? And then like a car's a machine, blah, blah, blah. But like, man, we personalize them so much. We call them baby. We name our cars. I have vanity plates for every car I've ever had. Do you have a vanity plate?
I do not.
What?
Did I shatter your expectations?
No, I just I don't know. So maybe
I also don't live on a lake.
That's fair. I don't know. Like, what are your thoughts on that? As like,
on just people loving their cars as much as they do. Well, it's interesting. I don't know that there's anything else that is now 120 years on from its advent that people are still so passionate about.
Sure.
Because I just think about when horses were the way of life. They got you around, they did your work for you.
Those were the days.
Yeah. But who lovingly, at such a high volume, who lovingly and nostalgically says, like, I really miss my horses and I so wish we could just be shoveling poop out of the middle of the road every day because that's how we got to work. People are not generally, but the car, it's almost like it was just invented how people still love them so much.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just a function of you literally can't get around in New Hampshire without one because there's basically no mass transit.
Yeah.
But even so, and I'm not a city dweller. I did live in San Francisco, but because I'm not a city dweller, I know I'm seeing the world through that lens.
Right.
I have to have a car to get anything done, to get my kids where they want to go and to go to work and all that. But I think that more than a matter of necessity, people really appreciate the freedom it allows them. Mm-hmm. And your horse could only get you so far.
Sure.
So I think that 120 plus years after the car really kind of made a splash in the United States, people still crave the freedom and the autonomy that a car can give them. And
you can spank a car too.
I mean, if you wanted to.
It's all I do when I drive. All right. You mentioned the pandemic a minute ago. What lessons did you learn from that in a human-oriented business and one that is so complicated and full of these different logistical questions, right? Like all that was disrupted massively, to say nothing of social relationships that people had. Like you're at the epicenter of both those things. What did you learn from the pandemic?
Yeah, I learned we're essential. So someone gave me that little designation, which felt good. We did not close for a single day during the pandemic. We did have to close a couple of our dealerships down because so many people were out that we literally couldn't serve people. We were just report to the Ford showroom. If you need any kind of car, just come to Grappone Ford.
Yeah.
I learned, again, that we're nimble when we have to be. And then the best part of it all was immediately, just due to pure supply and demand issues, a lot of dealers were jacking their prices up well over MSRP, between $2,500 and $10,000 per car.
I'm sorry, what is, define that for us?
The MSRP, the manufacturer's suggested retail price. So if you go, the sticker price, people call it. If you go to the lot and the sticker price is $37,000, in all likelihood, for the past however many years prior to the pandemic, nobody's been paying sticker price, unless it's a specialty car, like a Civic Type R, that'll be over sticker, or a Mustang GT, things like that. But for the most part, it's like this feeding frenzy game where everybody's pretty much an invoice and customers are getting really good deals because they're not paying anywhere near MSRP or sticker. So during the pandemic, as you probably remember, there were a lot of people.
Anything.
Okay. You selectively made yourself an amnesiac.
Yeah.
A lot of people wanted or needed cars, and there were not a lot being shipped or sent.
Right.
So there were times on our lot where we had one Toyota, one Mazda. I mean, down from a couple of hundred.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was the type of thing that was happening. And you can imagine with supply and demand, everybody wants them. Not enough people have them.
Yeah.
Clearly, the market was demanding a price shift.
Yeah.
So we decided at Grappone, and it's funny, we didn't even have to have a conversation about it. It was just something that was known to us. We're going to go to MSRP because we really don't have many cars at all.
Right.
But we're not going above that by even $1. Yeah. And that's something that when I sat and did the math a couple years into it, I was like, we easily left $12 million on the table.
Wow.
If you want to look at it that way.
Yeah.
Which was terrible that I did that math because I had just built a Mazda building that cost $12 million. And I was like, And
now I had two.
Dang, I'm going to be paying for that for the next 30 years.
Yeah.
But I sleep better at night,
right.
you know? And what I really hope is that when consumers, we call them guests, but when customers have a choice to make, can they please just take a moment to remember those businesses that really try their best to look out for them.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy in the heat of the moment, especially with a really expensive purchase,
Right.
a house or a car or things like that, to be like, well, I could save $500 or I could save $1,000. You could.
Right.
You could also buy everything from Amazon and not buy anything locally. That
Right.
is a choice, you know? And I'm not trying to Amazon shame people. I use it.
Right.
But my book is not available on Amazon. I
Yeah.
want people to go to Water Street Bookstore in Exeter and
Yeah.
Gibson's in Concord and all the other places and look around and have a bookstore experience.
Right.
And maybe buy my book and a couple of some tchotchke, you know?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
get out and support local. Same
Yeah.
deal. And so I guess what I ask is that if you're the type of person who's going to make conscious decisions about how you spend your money anyway, I'm probably saying it to the choir.
Right.
But for the majority of people who are like, cheaper is just cheaper, well,
Yeah.
it's not always, you
Right.
know? So for a business like ours that tries every day to behave with integrity and to take really good care of its team, it matters to us that people choose Grappone. So
Yeah. Right. Well,
that's my plea.
No, it's a great soliloquy. Penny wise, pound foolish, right? And I mean, you've thought longer and harder about it than I have, but you could even squint and consider that, okay, 12 million, right? But what we didn't do was jack up the price and be opportunistic, right? You could even think of you invested $12 million in building trust.
Yes.
Right? Like that would be an alternative way
Absolutely.
of thinking about
yeah,
it.
and every time we spend money to train our teams or if we take a loss, but we learned something from it, that's exactly what I tell myself. I just invested X number of dollars in X number of people. And now the challenge becomes like, okay, if we're not learning from that and we're not able to show any kind of fruit from those lessons,
Right.
then we have a different problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Well,
definitely investing and stewardship and all those things, those make more sense to me than the other side of the coin, which is how much we don't have.
yeah. Well, I can tell the listeners you definitely practice. I mean, you bought me lunch today. We had a whole lunch before starting recording. I don't know what that cost you, $25 or whatever, but loyalty for like I'm easy to please.
You'll always let me buy you lunch now.
Well, if you insist, we'll put some maple syrup on it. But I'm just saying, like, I'm loyal to everything. I'm a Grappone. Like, I've got a tattoo, Grappone. Your face is on my chest, which you didn't know before coming here, but I'll show you after we're done.
Next to Luigi.
Yeah, that's right. Next to the guy who's not my ancestor.
All your fake relatives are right on the chest.
Yeah,
there.
I keep getting tattoos of people that I shouldn't, and
You're gonna run out of space
real
pretty
estate.
soon.
Well, I'll just start tattooing other people, and it means something to me. Okay, Amanda, you wrote this amazing book that I'm going to read, and we're going to talk much more about it at some future
You
point.
gonna read it right now, or
No.
it's a special
Whoa.
7-hour edition of Granite Goodness?
I think I am related to this gentleman on page
Stop.
58.
Who is
okay. I'm going to open a random page,
Yeah.
and I'm going to read something, and then I want you to tell me what you remember about writing it.
Okay.
Wow, I didn't even know that there was that iteration of the name Francesca Antonio Grappone.
Francesca Antonio.
Okay, all right.
Frank.
Yeah. Okay, page 87. Mm-hmm. In the September 5th, 1905 edition of the Waterbury Record, an announcement tells the tale of an Italian immigrant family's hard work and entrepreneurial spirit. Quote, articles of association have been filed at the office of the Secretary of State in Montpelier by the Grappone Granite Corporation of Montpelier. The 5 signers are members of the Grappone family. One newspaper reported 6 unnamed Grappones as having founded Grappone Granite Corporation, but the 1906 Montpelier City Directory lists 5 as company signers: Frank A. Rocco, Charles Josephina, Frank's wife, and Minnie, the nickname of the boy's mother, Philomena. What involvement, if any, the Grappone woman had in the business is unknown. Why the brothers chose to include their mother and only one of their spouses and not all 3 is also a mystery. What we do know is that the first Grappone business founded in America was 40% woman-owned. That's
You
an
picked
amazing...
a really good random.
I did.
I was here. I am
great
a witness.
paragraph.
That was not a setup. It's
No,
not
it wasn't.
highlighted or
I
anything.
literally, you could see on camera, it was complete
yeah,
random.
it's not earmarked.
Well, that's an amazing paragraph.
Yeah, I never knew that. So until I researched it, I knew that they were in the granite trade because they're all stonemasons,
Mm-hmm.
which I imagine you probably have some stonemasons in your lineage if you're from southern Italy.
Maybe I do.
So that wasn't a surprise that they ended up in Barry, Montpelier, because that was like the granite capital of the world. What did surprise me is that women were listed as some of the owners, and I still don't know why. I'm not sure if they were involved in the day-to-day.
Yeah.
It's really hard to know. There's not, other than a few newspaper articles and then a couple of notices letting us know that they hadn't paid their taxes and things like that. It's pretty sketchy to know what their daily life was like.
Right.
So one of the most fun parts of the research for me was when I was researching Montpelier and Barrie and trying to figure out around 1905 when they were there, what was it like? Because it was very heavily Italian.
Yeah.
And I found, and God bless COVID for this, somebody at the Montpelier, or is it Barrie Public Library, Aldrich Public Library, in one of those two towns, digitized a bunch of old audio recordings from the 70s during COVID because there was like nothing else to do.
Yeah.
The worst audio quality you can possibly imagine.
Yeah. No, that's fine.
Okay. So
this part will be off camera.
Okay. So the very cool part about listening to these old recordings is they were made in the 70s with roughly 70, 80, 90-year-old people who remember clearly what it was like living in the Italian section of Barrie.
Yeah.
And so one of these particular interviews, there's this woman, and you can just tell this guy walks in with this huge chunky recorder and like drops it in the middle of the room and hits record.
Yeah.
And then they move so far away from it onto the couches or wherever that you could barely hear the conversation. So I'm running one day and I've got it cranked up to the max volume in my ears. And we're listening to them talking about the good old days. And then the lady, you hear her, the woman being interviewed, she's like, oh, excuse me, let me go get the coffee and the lemon cookies or whatever she made, the lemon cake.
Yeah.
So she leaves and you hear her like bustling around the kitchen. And then there's this kind of weird sound in my ear. I'm like, what is that? It's her husband who had fallen asleep and was snoring next to the microphone.
Yeah.
And he was clearly much closer to the microphone than the people doing the recording or the lady being interviewed.
So it's so loud for you all of a sudden.
So then she comes out with the treats and he wakes up and starts chewing in my ear.
Oh my God.
Which is, if you know what misophonia is, I'm one of those people, I don't like the sound of chewing.
Right.
But if I don't have it at max volume, I can't hear what she's saying. So I'm listening to him chew and then he burps and then he falls back to sleep. And then she keeps going with her interview. But I'm like, it was like I was there. It was the best.
You can't make that
And
up.
public libraries are the bomb. When I'm in the acknowledgments, I'm like, I love librarians. They're just the best people in the world. So go to your public library.
All right. Wow. Well, what a wonderful anecdote. That's
so glad we captured
funny.
it for posterity.
I am too, man. You seem like a pretty chipper person. Would you say that you're an optimist?
Oh, for sure.
Why?
It's just a much more pleasant way to get through the day.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the nature-nurture debate is a very good one. I think when I was little, I don't know, probably an optimist. Teenage years, 20s, not a very pleasant human being to be around.
Sure,
very pessimistic,
Who
very
is?
much like, catty and jealous of other girls, the comparison thing and all of it.
I'm judging 16-year-old you right now.
Right now?
Yeah.
You should be.
Really
She was a
harshly.
vicious individual. But I guess when I became a parent, probably in and around that time, it's just like, what's not to be happy about? I mean, I have healthy kids.
Right.
I have a job and a husband I love. I'm access to healthy food and clean water. And, I have quite a practice of gratitude every night before I go to bed, every morning when I wake up. I want to remind myself what works and what's good because there is no I will never, ever run out of things that are working.
Amanda, this is going to be you later. You can say, great day today, Amanda. I like to thank God that podcast wasn't any longer.
I am so grateful it ended when it did.
Thank goodness that we got that done and I didn't have to spend another minute manacled to that beautiful wooden table in Treeline Outfitters. All right, Amanda, what does live free or die mean to you?
Well, I mean, in a word, independence.
Yeah.
I'll just go with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a great answer. All right. We've been going for 53 minutes.
Who knew?
Which is shocking, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Two people who like to talk. I can't believe it.
Impossible. Man, well, this is really fun, Amanda. I have to have you on again. I'm completely serious, by the way.
Please.
Like K-Truck, maple syrup, this is the beginning.
Yes.
And you should if you want to do a podcast show, you should do it. I'm serious.
I don't have time.
Yeah.
But thank you. Thank you for doing it for me.
I have a completely sometimes it's all non-zero sum to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing that we can do, one person can do all this and the technology and capabilities are there. And sometimes people, they have this attitude of like, oh, do we really need another podcast show?
Yeah, sure we do. If it's this.
Right. It's like, as opposed to when,
Right.
it was just a couple random people deciding that's all the media and stuff that gets made, right? And like, I would take this version
Yeah.
for all its craziness, give everyone a microphone. Like, I think that's better.
I agree.
I'm happy about it.
More of this. Like I said, love it.
All right. Well, this is going to be episode 1 of the Grappone.
Your library.
Yeah, the Grappone family library.
Yeah, I'll get my sister Allison on here for you.
I would love that.
That'd be great. She lives in Concord, so yeah, we should have her over.
And hey, I mean, how about this? You know, if you're someone, you have the itch, right? The radio, you like to talk, you're a great schmoozer, and that's a compliment for me. You know, I love co-hosting with people. I'm trying to get more of my friends. Like, if there's other people, like, come on here, let's talk to people together.
Oh yeah, I'll come over now that I know how to get here and that you're not located in Exeter. I will for sure be back.
Well, how are you going to get me lunch if you don't go through?
That's true. That is a good point.
Now you have to path dependency. All right. Thank you so much, Amanda.
You're welcome.
For your
Thank
time
you.
today. Hey there, thanks for spending some time with us, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation. You can learn more about today's guest and how to get involved with or support their work in the show notes. If you'd like to suggest a guest for the show or have any story tips for our Good News in New Hampshire newsletter, shoot me a message at hello@granitegoodness.com. Music for this episode was provided by the band Sneaky Miles, who hail from Newmarket, New Hampshire. Until next time, I'm the creator and host of Granite Goodness, Andy DeMeo. Thanks for listening.